Good morning, one and all. So, in this video, we are going to see about the topic called as CPU scheduling. So, what is actually CPU scheduling is? CPU is meant for to perform some task. So, when we speak about process, the CPU scheduling, which has the authority to decide which process has entered into the processor and which has to be suspended. So this thing is called as what? CPU scheduling. What is actually the main function of CPU is scheduling is it will ensure that whenever a CPU remains idle, the OS has at least selected one of the processes available in the ready queue to use it in the processor. So for a long time the CPU should not be idle. So that is the main function of the CPU scheduling. What are all the objectives of process scheduling algorithm? So let me start with the first point. It is nothing but utilization of CPU should be at maximum level, and means what? CPU we have to keep busy the CPU as possible, and allocation of CPU should be fair. One process should not be inside the CPU for over a long period of time, which is not a fair thing. And the throughput should be maximum. Number of processes that complete their execution per unit time should be maximized. So the next is minimum turnaround time. Turnaround time means the time taken for a particular process to finish its execution should be much fast compared to a normal case, to be the least. There should be a minimum waiting time, and the process should not starve in the ready queue. Waiting time for the other process should be very short. And minimum response time. What is it? Minimum response time means that the time when a process produces the first response should be as less as possible. So these are all the objectives of CPU scheduling. So what are all the different terminologies we need to know before going into the CPU scheduling algorithm? The first thing is called as the arrival time. Arrival time means nothing but the time at which the process arrives in the ready queue. Completion time, the time at which process completes its execution. And burst time is nothing but time required by a process for CPU execution. And turnaround time is nothing but the time difference between completion time and arrival time. So these are all the different terminologies we need to know before entering into the CPU scheduling algorithm. So next is what is the formula for calculating the turnaround time? Which is nothing but completion time minus arrival time, and waiting time, which is nothing but turnaround time minus burst time. What is the criteria of CPU scheduling? It has several criteria. We will see one by one. First is the CPU utilization. The main objective of any CPU scheduling is we have to keep the CPU busy as possible. Theoretically, CPU utilization can range from 0 to 100, but if you take any real-time system, it varies from 40 to 90% depending on the load upon the system. And the next criteria is throughput. Throughput is nothing but it should be maximum. How many process entering into the CPU, that much throughput we can calculate. So it is nothing but the measure of work done by the CPU is the number of processes being executed and completed per unit of time. And it may vary depending on the length or duration of the processes. Turnaround time for a particular process, which is an important criteria, is how long it is taking to execute that process. The time elapsed from the time of submission of the process to the time of completion is known as what? Turnaround time. Okay. Next is waiting time. The scheduling algorithm does not affect the time required to complete the process once it starts execution. It only affects the waiting time of a process, that is, time spent by a process waiting in the ready queue. Next is the response time, which is the last criteria. How we need to calculate response time is CPU allocation time minus arrival time, that is the response time. Completion time, if the process completes its execution, that is completion time. Priority, if the operating system assigns priority to process, that process has to enter the CPU first, which has the highest priority. So these are all the types of CPU scheduling. One is preemptive and non-preemptive. The first thing is called as FCFS, that is first come first serve, which comes under non-preemptive. And the shortest job first, non-preemptive we have, and preemptive also we have. And priority scheduling is preemptive. So, and round robin is also preemptive. So we have 4 algorithms. Let us see one by one in the next forthcoming videos. Thank you.